What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we have a review of Alluvial and their new album Sarcoma via Nuclear Blast Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alluvial is something of a death metal supergroup featuring current and former members of Suffocation, the Faceless, Entheos, and Aegaeon, among others. Sarcoma is the follow-up to the band's critically acclaimed 2017 debut, The Deep Longing for Annihilation, and named metaphorically for the cancer that grows from the connective tissue in the body. Now, while I was obviously familiar with the various other projects of each member, this was actually my first experience with Alluvial as a whole. Not only had I managed to somehow miss the debut, but also this is one of the few releases I went into completely blind, having not even heard any of these singles prior. Now, I gotta say, despite the hype from my fellow reviewers and high expectations given the roster, initially, I was not very impressed.
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
The first two songs in particular, while perfectly fine overall, felt like pretty generic deathcore well below the abilities of these talented musicians. I was actually shocked after the fact to discover that both of these were pushed as early singles. Again, I want to be clear that there's nothing bad about these songs, it's just that they kind of chug along like any number of the dozens of other like-minded deathcore I've already heard this year. Thy Underling is definitely the better of the two, but both come off as just so instantly forgettable, despite some of the decent moments and admittedly killer solos. To be frank, they're just kind of boring. Contrast those with this banger I was turned on to by Darko. Now that's how you leave an impact. It's just so confusing to me that they would choose these tracks when there are so many better options available. I mean, if I had my way, I would have led with the Putrid Sunrise. This track is a total banger with its instantly infectious D-beat and thrashy, grindy guitar hooks. It's overflowing with pure riffage and a primal energy that is simply impossible to ignore. Not to mention great dynamic songwriting that takes the listener in several unexpected directions over its duration. The title track would have been serviceable as well, with a similar vibe but still much more to work with. Then of course they were at least wise to recognize that 40 Stories deserves special attention. And it's This track is to Sarcoma what Another Breath was to Injusted's Where Only Gods May Tread in 2020. Strong Mastodon vibes here with the gruff, clean singing alongside the earworm, techie guitars. I love the focus on just the guitars in that quiet opening, and then as things progress, the big mood and the atmosphere is utterly palpable. It's impossible not to get caught up in this whirlwind of emotion. And that part where Wes and Kevin layer the contrast of their vocals side by side right before everything goes nuts is absolute perfection. You'd better believe I'll be remembering this one. I only wish they did more of this. You've got these two great vocalists with very different styles, but it only really gets showcased front and center here and to a lesser extent on Sleepers Become Giants. But another personal favorite for me from the deeper cuts is actually Sugar Paper. Despite being an instrumental, this nearly 6-minute track really lets the guitars do the talking. With lots of different techniques from Dimebag-esque whammy bar abuse and straight shredding to much proggier directions in the second half. And rather than simply coming across as pure wankery, there's also a broad spectrum of emotion it evokes in me every time I listen to it. Honestly, more so than many of the vocal tracks. Anodyne is also an appropriate way to cap the album off with a final rager. The riffs on this one are like Lamb of God on tech death-laced PCP. Lots of great alternated palm muting alongside some really killer drumming as well. Oh, and of course another solo. I mean, it's pretty much par for the course at this point, as almost every track has one.
No stairway. Denied.
So in terms of living up to the hype that was set for me, Sarcoma is another mixed bag. It's definitely better and more interesting than some of the other lukewarm reviews I've had this year, like with Mental Cruelty, but it's definitely lacking in consistency. I'd say that about half of these tracks are really great, with even 2 or 3 best of 2021 playlist worthy ones. And then the other half are just kind of middle of the road. And I'm sorry, but nothing drives me more crazy than when fanboys say that a handful of killer tracks is enough to make an entire album among the best of the year. Turning to my scales, I give Sarcoma an 8 for enjoyability. It's a really solid time, and honestly, it gets better with each listen. It's above average. I could see the score creeping up on me, but overall, I think this is fair. It's not something that at this time I feel I'm going to keep going back to, but again, that could change. I give it a 9 for musicianship. This should be obvious with the musicians at play here. I've said time and time again, like, there are great moments here of drumming, guitar, some of the vocal melodies, the songwriting in certain areas, really strong. It's not quite a 10, but this is definitely the strongest element of the album. And then I give it a 7 for innovation. Overall, the final result here still sounds very much like many other death metal albums I've listened to in this similar style. So nothing like groundbreaking or earth-shattering here, but still, like I said, an enjoyable album. So an 8 overall and a B- for Alluvial and Sarcoma. But wait, it's me from the future to tell you about To Where the Light Retreats. Hans Grossmann is a German drummer, writer, sound engineer, and music producer who has made his name in the likes of legendary bands like Necrophagist, Obscura, Alkaloid, and even Triptychon, to name just a few. But during this time, he has also kept very busy with his own self-titled works, with 3 previous albums already under his belt in The Radial Covenant, my personal favorite, The Crypts of Sleep, which was one of my favorites of 2016, and Apophenia. To Where the Light Retreats finds Hans once more at the top of his game with 8 incredible monuments of progressive and technical death metal. Across the board, the instrumentation is absolutely dizzying. But I must say, despite the usual performative gymnastics, this may also be his most accessible work to date, thanks to what feels like an increased focus on melodic death metal elements and plenty of face-melting solos. Everything feels just a little bit more focused and streamlined, but without losing all of the cool stuff I look for with this very multi-talented musician. This album actually comes out next week, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to get the hype going a little early. In any case, expect it already to make my best of June list. And don't go anywhere. Check out my best death metal list of 2021 so far for more of my favorites. And hey, just stick around in general because I got plenty more videos coming right after this one. More album reviews, tier lists, interviews with bands on the podcast, you name it, we've got it. So plenty of reasons to subscribe if you have not already. If you enjoyed the review, hit the like button, comment, let me know what is your favorite death metal album of the year so far. And then you can also chat with us on Discord and support me on Patreon. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.